Hi, my name is Melanie. This presentation is my Capstone 2 project that I put together using a global energy availability and consumption data set. This data set was found on Kaggle, and I put together a heat map, linear regression visualizations, histograms, and a cluster modeling that contained both PCA and a non-PCA comparison. So the data set is between the years 2000 and 2020. It's found at the link that is on the slide. And I also use this original code that I changed to adapt to the modeling that I wanted to complete for this project. So first things first, I did create two Google Colab notebooks for this project. One does not contain the PCA modeling, and the other one does contain the PCA modeling. The loading and cleanup of the data in both notebooks is exactly the same. So what I did is I imported libraries, I loaded the data set, I figured out what data types we were working with, just did a little visualization of which ones were the numerical ones and which ones were not. And then I took a look at what values were missing in the data set here. And then I created a bar chart in order to have just a better visualization of what that looked like. So financial flows to developing countries and renewable percentage of primary energy were the two metrics that lacked the most data. Whether that is because they're not being tracked in most countries or other reasons, I'm not sure. Interesting that those two are the ones that had most of the missing data. And then what I did is I dropped the columns that had high numbers of missing values. And then what I did with the remaining columns is fill missing values with the mean numbers, and then dropped any remaining rows that had missing values after that little cleanup step. Then I checked for duplicate rows, there were none, and then I checked for not applicable as nans in each column, and there were none. So now we have a nice and cleaned up data set to start doing our modeling with. So the first model that I put together was the heat map. So a few things of note in the heat map is there's high levels of correlation between access to clean fuels for cooking and access to electricity. I believe that indicates that most countries have both of those things. The next high level of correlation I noted was the financial flows to developing countries and the electricity from fossil fuels. I think that indicates to me that most electricity in countries that are being financially supported are coming from fossil fuels currently. And then the third one that I noted was primary energy consumption per capita is highly correlated with electricity from fossil fuels. And I think that indicates that most of the electricity generated on this planet both consumed and generated on this planet are currently coming from fossil fuels. So the next little piece of modeling that I did was some linear regression visualizations, and what was noted in these is that most countries most countries have access to electricity regardless of their GDP, and that's this one in the top left corner. In the next one, it's noted that most countries do not have many renewables in the energy share of their total final energy consumption when compared with their GDP, and that's indicative over the bubbles being near this zero line. And then the third one is when comparing the renewable energy share in the total final energy consumption to electricity access, most do not have renewables in that renewable metric, as indicated by most of the bubbles being up in this top corner here. But there's a nice spread that's almost to 100% of the countries that do. So there's not as many of these countries here, but it looks like that is something that is emerging. And then our fourth visualization here doesn't really tell us a whole lot of things because the dots are evenly spread across the chart. So taking a look at the histograms of the 106 countries in the data set, most have access to electricity and clean cooking fuel. And that's these two histograms here. And most countries have low carbon electricity. And that's this visualization right here, this histogram right here. And also most countries have low primary energy consumption per capita. And that's this one here. I've also included in the slide notes links to sources on the internet that explain how these models / visualizations work. So that's something if folks want more information to look into. So the next piece of this modeling that I did was a comparison of, I did the cluster modeling and I used 10 clusters in order to understand what is the ideal amount of clusters in this particular model. I also did a PCA and a non-PCA model in order to have a discussion of what that might mean. So the principal components analysis is something that is used or applied to large complicated data sets that have convoluted data. Think things like images and other complicated data. Effectively, what it does is it flattens out a data set and reduces dimensions. So I found this really high level and easy to understand diagram at the link on the slide. And so what I found when I did the PCA, non-PCA on this data set is there were actually no differences from the results in the cluster modeling that was completed. As you can see from these results that are here, and I also sampled, in the silhouette analysis as well. They were exactly the same. And the other thing I found in this analysis is the 3 cluster is the ideal cluster to use. That is very typical as part of this modeling. So when you take a look at the models all the way up to 10, the plots themselves look very similar between the 10 and the 3. And so the final analysis that I put together, I used the 3 cluster. And so I used just a visualization on the globe here. And so in our results, China and the US are clustered together. And then most of Africa, some of the Middle East, South Asia, 2 South American countries, and 3 Central American countries are clustered together. And then in the last cluster, we found that Canada, Mexico, Australia, most of South America and Europe, North Africa and the country of South Africa, Mongolia, Kazakhstan, Turkmenistan, Uzbekistan are all part of that cluster. It also was interesting to note that there's several countries that do not have any data in this data set. So Russia, Greenland, Iran, Syria, Vietnam, Taiwan, Venezuela, and Bolivia are absent from this data set for whatever reasons. And that's my presentation. Thank you.